and one.
So this is Senate Government Operations. It is Thursday, February 25th. And today we're going to be looking at the Agency of Public Safety proposal. Let me give a couple ground rules. We have committee members and staff, and then we have people who've asked to testify to us, to speak with us. And then we have people who might be in the room but are just here joining us. So I'm asking not to use chat, please. The only person that uses chat is Gail, and that is to post things that people refer to, studies, documents, whatever. Because chat is a bit like side conversations in the committee rooms. And if we were in a committee room, we would ask you to please step outside and have your conversation. So that's what we're doing here. So we do not use chat. The other thing that I wanted to say is that we have at 2:00, we need to take a very short break and jump into a joint assembly with the House to, it's going to take about 5 minutes, I believe. It was going to take longer, but it's to count the votes and announce the results of the UVM trustees election. And my understanding is that because there are still some votes that haven't come in, they're giving it a little bit more time. And so all we're going to do is go into the joint session and adjourn and come back. So people, I think that while we're in the joint session, Gail, you can take it off the YouTube, but people should just stay in the room with us because it doesn't make sense to leave and come back. Does that make sense, everybody?
Yeah.
Is everybody clear about that? Okay, great. So with that, what I'm going to do is also say that I drew up this really cool little thing, which no one can see at all, of course. And I didn't know how to get it to anybody because I'm so technologically inept. But it's just what it is an organizational chart for the proposal for the Agency of Public Safety. And I just wanted, so I'm just going to very quickly kind of run through that, and then we'll just open it up for people to speak with us. And I understand that we had a number of people who wanted to speak with us, and we will take them as they show up. Some people may sign in a little later, but we'll do our best to hear from everybody. So basically what we're talking about here is a restructuring, a reorganization of the department. And there is a bill, but the bill is 23 pages, and we haven't, as a committee, gone through it yet. What we're still looking at is the concepts. So that's what we're hearing about today. And basically what the concept is that there would be, the department would be elevated to an agency. And in the agency, there would be two departments. One would be a Department of Safety and Emergency Management. And in that, a Department, yes, of Safety and Emergency Management. And in that would be three divisions. One would be Homeland Security and Emergency Management. One would be inspections. Then there would be the Division of Fire Safety. And within that, it would include investigation and prevention and safety. And one would be a Division of Technical Response Unit. And that would include hazmat, search and rescue, and the Swiftwater teams. Then there would be a Department of Law Enforcement. And within that department would be two divisions. One would be the Division of the Vermont State Police, and the other would be the division of the other state certified law enforcement officers, primarily right now, looking at Department of Motor Vehicles and Fish and Wildlife later on. And then there would be a division of support services, which is kind of the business functions of the agency. And that would include administration, communications, and communications includes 911, the PSAPs, and radio technology. And also the fleet and forensic law would be in there. And then there would be a division of training, which would include the fire academy and the police academy. And then there's an office of something or other, and I had no idea what to call it because it would contain VCIC. I didn't know what that would be called, but I realized that was a lot of information, but it is a restructuring. So given that, I would just like to start off here. And my first question is, does anybody, and what we want to do today is hear primarily from community people. We have had a chance to hear from the council and the academy and the Sheriff's Association and other agencies that might be affected by this. But today we're going to be hearing primarily from community people who have an interest and want to learn more. And we decided that it was best not to do it as a public hearing, because in a public hearing, the way they're traditionally handled is you get your 2 minutes, that's it, next person 2 minutes. And we want this instead to be more of a give and take so that we can, as you speak to us, we can ask you questions and clarify and have a conversation with you. So that's why this is a committee meeting as opposed to a public hearing, if that makes any sense to anybody. But so my first question is, of the people who have joined us here, does anybody have a time constraint and would like to go first? And what I will say is, I don't know if I can see everybody on my screen. So if you want to speak or something to say, please raise your hand. And if I don't see you, just say, Madam Chair. That would be great. And I will recognize you. So I see nobody seems, oh, you're using your little yellow hands.
Yeah, I see a little yellow hand right there.
Yeah,
I see two.
Yes, I see little yellow hands. I tend to prefer real hands, but little yellow hands work. Yes, thank you. Reverend Cockrell?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have a time constraint?
It would help me out a lot. I've got an interview I've got to do this afternoon. So if I could go early in the process, I'd truly appreciate it.
I would be pleased to have you go now. And it is now 1:45. So if you're in the middle of your testimony, please forgive us if we have to leave at 2:00, okay?
Okay, I won't be long.
I saw somebody else's little yellow hand. Oh, Jess, okay. You have a time constraint also?
I would love to get back to work if possible.
I will take you both very soon, okay?
Thank you.
Let's start with the Reverend then.
Thank you very
let me first, because many of you aren't with us all the time. Let's introduce ourselves as committee members so that you know who we are and where we're from. I'm Jeanette White, and I'm from Windham County. I live in Putney. This is Sarah Polina.
I'm Anthony Polina. I represent Washington County.
Brian Collmore, Rutland County.
Allison Clarkson, Windsor County District.
Aisha Ram, Chittenden County.
And we have with us Amaran Aberjoly, who is our attorney, and behind the scenes is Gail Kerrigan, who kind of takes care of us here. So
Madam
with
Chair,
that, oh, I'm sorry, Mark.
I was just going to echo everybody. There's folks who are civilians on the call that all of us are on time constraints because we're civilians. But I wanted to just ask if the chair could please with a little leniency, allow the rest of the people in the room to introduce themselves. This is a kind of a setting that is unusual, that is not normal for a number of us. And this involves policing, and there are some people who won't even come and testify because they're kind of on edge. So how about if we get some introductions so folks know who's in the room? I know some of you, but I think it'd be appropriate and maybe even polite.
Thank you. That's a good suggestion. So with that, I'll start with my screen here and call on people to introduce themselves. Does that work? So, Mr. Sheets?
Good afternoon. Thank you, Madam Chair. Mark, good to see you again. I'm Bill Sheets. I'm the Interim Executive Director of the Vermont Police Academy, Vermont Criminal Justice Council.
And Bill Sorrell?
Yes, Bill Sorrell, former Attorney General and the chair of the newly created Vermont Criminal Justice Council.
And I see Tony Fakis there.
Tony Fakis, Director of Enforcement and Safety Division at Motor Vehicle Department.
And I see John Federico.
Hello, yes, John Federico. I'm an employee of the Department of Motor Vehicles Enforcement and Safety. I'm an inspector there, and I'm a VSEA representative to the LEAB and the Vermont Criminal Justice Council.
Thank you. And I see Mike Sherling, Commissioner Sherling.
Good afternoon, folks. Mike Sherling, Commissioner of the Department of Public Safety.
And Mark Anderson.
Well, good afternoon, Madam Chair and everyone else. Mark Anderson, Windham County Sheriff. I'm also the second Vice President of the Vermont Sheriff's Association and the Sheriff's Association designee to the Vermont Criminal Justice Council.
Did I miss anybody? All right. I hope that helps. And I will say, and maybe I shouldn't be saying this, but if there are people who feel that they really want to come and speak with us, we could do a session. We are entitled to go into executive session, and we could do that if there are people who really feel they want to speak with us, but not have it either go live broadcasted or have other people in the room. So I offer that when we get to that point, okay? All right, so given that, I was going to go first to the Reverend, but and I'm going to go first to Miss Laporte. Is that how you say your name?
Yeah, I'm also, especially, I don't have a hard stop. I don't have another call. So if the Reverend wants to go first, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Please,
Okay.
ladies first. Ladies first.
I just wanted you to get back to work, whatever that is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I probably won't be as brief, Reverend Cockrell. So just a warning.
Just remember that at 2:00 we're going to do this switch-a-roo for about 5 or 6 minutes.
Okay.
But go ahead and just introduce yourself and speak to us.
Yeah, so my name is Jess Laporte. I use she, her pronouns, and I am currently living in Burlington, Vermont, but I was born and raised in Stowe, Vermont, and kind of all across the Moyle County. I recently moved back to Vermont, actually right as the COVID pandemic was taking off, after living for a number of years abroad. And I'm calling in on this issue in ways that are directly related to this merger and also related in general to the state's approach to public safety reform and transformation. And I believe one of the initiatives was called modernization. And I want to speak on a couple of points. As a member of the public, it was brought to my attention that the state was seeking feedback on the modernization of policing process. And as I looked into that at the time, it was clear to me, and I don't know if it's still true because nobody has answered my inquiries, but Jennifer Morrison was the contact for engaging on that process. Jennifer Morrison is a woman who has a history of not welcoming and also targeting Black and other people of color who have sought to raise their voice against injustices in the criminal justice system, but specifically around policing in Burlington, where she was serving. As a member of the public, it doesn't bring me much comfort or interest in engaging with state bodies or much confidence in a potential restructuring of these departments when some members of the public tried to engage with that department around it. Sorry, I don't know if I'm using the right department, agency, whatever.
Okay, yeah.
But when we tried to engage around it, and nobody from that department, including Mike Sherling, who I emailed directly, responded to this request for information if she was still involved in this process. And I think it's just one of many examples of why people of color do not want to engage, because there isn't good faith and there isn't transparency. And Vermont continues to choose to engage people who have a history of racist behavior and of quieting and silencing the opinions of people of color, as well as just like the public on issues that have been deemed controversial, specifically around policing. In my communication with that department around this issue, I brought up concerns about having a meaningful opportunity for a diverse set of members of the community to weigh in on something like this. And I'm here testifying around, a restructuring of these departments and creation of an agency, really against my own best interests and safety, because Black activists in this state that speak regularly on these issues are often targets of civilian harassment and also harassment by people in public service positions, local politicians, and people like Jennifer Morrison, who held a position in the Burlington Police Department. So I am advocating that restructuring like this, in the same way that you have already heard from people who are within law enforcement and within the current system, that there be a structured and meaningful way to engage with people who are everyday citizens, and in particular, marginalized groups that have been disproportionately victimized by the police, because this involves integrating law enforcement with these other bodies. I think many of us are advocating for there to be independence and other forms of public safety that are not intertwined with law enforcement. So I understand that in some ways, it can be bureaucratic restructuring, but this is all incredibly important to have in mind. And it's not lost on me that there's only really the three of us calling in as people of color. In a related note as well, I believe that any restructuring, this is me speaking as an individual, any restructuring of public safety should include an independent body that has investigatory and disciplinary power over law enforcement at the state level as well as at local levels. There is a proposal on the table, I believe, brought by Senator Rahm. I'm not sure. I'm not sure all of the details of it. But from what I can, glean from what is available, it doesn't include disciplinary power. It is not an independent body, as there would be law enforcement officers and members of policing institutions a part of it. And it also doesn't have investigatory power. We're seeing this play out in Burlington currently, where a body like this was proposed that had those three principles in addition to transparency and representation. It was successful to go to the ballot, and the mayor vetoed it. And within the same week, the police used excessive force on a member of the public that did not follow protocol. And the current police commission was unable to subpoena additional video evidence related to the incident, was unable to conduct their own independent investigation, and were only able to review what the interim or acting or whatever chief of police provided to them. Then when they requested additional information to have more of an investigation. They were individually harassed by members of the police union, and without building in some sort of an accountability mechanism that is effective into this restructuring, you're leaving a huge blind spot in which a year after this, activists like myself will have to be raising our voices to ask for the creation of a board like this. So I would strongly encourage that in this restructuring process. And I want to reiterate the importance that this has input from communities, not just Black, Indigenous, and people of color, but victims of domestic violence. Police officers are much more likely to, they have a higher, oh my gosh, I can't even speak, but higher rates of committing domestic violence. Members of the unhoused community, those who have experienced or have direct experience with drug and substance abuse should be their voices should be included, because they are the ones that are most likely to interact with the police. And I'm talking a lot about the police because you're linking law enforcement with all of our other emergency services in a way in which those other services will not remain independent. Thank you.
So I'm going to, I think it's getting close to 2:00, but I'm going to ask you a couple questions and then maybe we take the break and then come back. Does that work? And you can answer the questions when we come back. I just want to make sure that, so I guess the question I would have is that we do have the Criminal Justice Council, which was expanded to include community members and the voices that you were just referring to. I think there's somebody from the Network on Domestic Violence and a number of other voices that were added to the council. And it acts as the investigative and disciplinary council. So I just wondered if it remains completely independent from the agency, if that satisfies the need for an oversight and independent body, or if that doesn't and there needs to be something else entirely. So I don't want you to have to try to answer all that right now, because I'm going to have to.
I can just be like brief, and if not, I think for me, I am unsure the specific powers of that body to subpoena evidence and to conduct an independent investigation, as opposed to it being an investigation within internal affairs. That is a key distinguisher. And also, I just want to highlight that representation of executive directors or program coordinators or managers from organizations around the state are not the same as people with lived experience, who tend to not only have challenges to rise into those positions of power and visibility, but also are unlikely to want to expose themselves to like a public election due to their personal lived experience. And that's why we don't see them as often as elected officials. So yeah, just on representation and investigatory power, that's kind of where I am, but I haven't reviewed their powers to see how it lines up or doesn't line up.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think, and we can look at those, and also the, because there is a lot of sentiment to make sure that body, it remains completely independent.
Independent. That's a key value.
Mm-hmm. So I think.
So we'll go on.
We're going to, but please stay with us if you would, the support, because we'd like to continue having you in the conversation if you're able to do it. Okay, thanks. Okay, so we're going to leave the meeting and then we're going to come back. but you all
All right. Once again, I want to thank you all for letting me be here. I've got a 3 o'clock meeting I've got to go to. So thank you once again. And we look forward to talking with you all again later.
please
Great.
and
Thank
we
you.
will notify, we'll keep you on the list. The way we do it is we have a list of people who are we consider the usual suspects. And when we're taking up the topic, we'll let you know that the topic is coming up again. So if you choose to join us again, you are welcome.
Please do. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. Bye. So Mark, would you like to weigh in here?
I'd love to. That's a good guy.
Good.
That's the pastor of my church. So yeah, Mark Hughes, the executive director of the Racial Justice Alliance and Justice for All, for the record. Thank you, Madam Chair. It's good to see you again. It seems like we were just together earlier.
We
today.
were.
Oh yeah, we were together. So I just want to thanks for the invite. Definitely wanted to come out and have a conversation about public safety. The first thing I want to mention is this thing called history, because what I'm really operating from, the context that I'm operating from, is not just our national history, but also our state history, and in what it has dealt with law enforcement as well as public safety, so-called public safety, has consistently served Black and brown bodies. Okay, because I want to frame our conversation, my testimony, because I don't like to just jump into a policy or in a testimony and pretend like somehow or another that the challenges that we were struggling with before we came up with this idea somehow or another just didn't exist. The fact that 1 in 14 Black men are not incarcerated in this state, or that 11% of the prisons are not Black in this state, and that the racial disparities on traffic stops are not increasing in some areas, and that the use of force in my city is on its third level of increase over the last 3 years. And the list goes on. And then that I have to frame that with the inequities in rental housing that we know 50% of the time we're discriminated against. And the list goes on with education, expulsions, suspensions, economic development. We're challenged with on every side. So I want to frame, when we start talking about public safety and we start talking about all of these apparatuses across the state coming together under that, that thing we call public safety, I want to make sure that you understand it as an African-American man here in the state, that as soon as I hear you say, we're going to put all these things under public safety, immediately I have a visceral response. Immediately, just by nature, which goes to question, well, why is it that we're not really being engaged, or why is that public engagement not at an all-time high level, particularly in light of the fact that we know that we're in the middle of a racial reckoning, and there's transformation underway in Burlington that is equivalent to the opposite of what you're doing. So that's kind of what's troubling me about it. And I wanted to show up, and I just want to go back before I talk a little bit about process. I think I said in testimony together today is like process is like the last thing before God in an argument. But it's important because, there's some challenges that I'm seeing here. But I will say this first, though, is that it is real when Black and brown folks, now I'm going to go on, folks in disabilities communities, LGBTQIA, let me just go ahead and clarify this. Anybody that's not a cis, straight, white man, okay, their interactions with the police department and the public safety apparatus is different, period, and generally underserved. So as we're having these conversations, not only is it important that the community is super duper plugged in, but that those folks are centered in the conversation. I'm not seeing that happening. I'm not seeing that happening, folks. So that's kind of like one of my primary concerns. I have more, but that's one of my primary concerns here, and I just wanted to kind of put that one in the ground, put that stake in the ground, and keep it moving. The other thing is when we talk about processes, is this really came up on my radar when there was a joint committee discussion that happened last week. I think it was last week. This all goes really fast when you're doing a lot of stuff. And oh, by the way, we are working on a constitutional amendment to move slavery, to abolish slavery. Racism is a public health emergency joint resolution. Voter suppression language removed. Reparations, cultural empowerment, home and land ownership, wellness, data racial equity, economic empowerment, public safety, as well as a cannabis equity bill, all at the same time right now. So I'd like to be in other places. So this right here, I don't see the sense of urgency of it either. And when I stop for a minute and we start having this conversation, I'd love to hear from you, or maybe even the law enforcement officers, since I'm the last one to talk, where the fire is, no pun intended. So that's another thing that I'm kind of struggling with. Maybe I don't see something. It's quite likely because this is a public safety situation. So so that's kind of where my conversation starts with this whole thing. Now I want to acknowledge something, and I did it by design during break. Is I know you. I am aware of Commissioner Sherling, understand where he's coming from, because my wife is Christine Longmore, and he'll know what that means. I know Tony Fakos. He'll know what that means. I know Bill Sheets. He knows what that means. Okay. Everybody doesn't have that. Okay. The first time I met Bill, I walked in a room of armed police, uninvited, and said, "I'm here to work with you," and sat down. The reason why I did that is because who I am. Maybe that's anomalous or something like that. Okay. Or maybe I'm just not afraid to die. But at the end of the day, what we have here is a situation where that does not exist. This testimony that you're receiving from Black and brown folks, these are courageous people. Jessica Laporte is a woman of courage. Reverend Christopher Cockrell is a courageous man. These guys showed up under exceptional circumstances. Don't ever forget that. And don't take their testimony for granted. Because what we're dealing with here is we're dealing with a situation where we've had public safety come together and essentially sit down and chat it up with both committees, House and Senate, which opportunities we were not afforded. And those of us some of us are taking time out of our busy schedule. We would have loved to have an audience of both committees, Madam Chair. So, but we are afforded this opportunity, so we'll take it. And I did tune in on part of that. And you know what I saw? A conversation. Y'all was kicked back, just chilling and chatting it up. We would love that opportunity too. Process. Don't hold it against us and then use it against us. So we would like to have a fair and an equitable opportunity to come to the table and have a conversation. And if that's not fair and it's not equitable, a lot of folks are not going to come. So it's not that they're scared. They just don't give a damn because they don't feel like they're being treated fair. They don't think it matters. So I think, again, I think this is really important. I mean, and if it's tone that you're looking for or courtesy and all that other stuff, let's get past that. Let's just call all this what it is. This looks like a duck. Okay, this is what it looks like. So I think we need to be honest about what it is that we're doing and why it is that we're doing and when it is that we're doing it in the middle of a global pandemic, in a national, in a racial referendum. So that's where I'll start. And so I'm thinking that it's important to talk about oversight. And I know that Sister Laporte, you know, she laid it out. I cannot really touch the way that she laid it out and how Dr. Cockrell elaborated. But I will say that pre-existing conditions mean everything. We've never gotten oversight right with the state police. The state police cover 90% of the land mass, and they are 1/3 of all law enforcement officers in this state. And SPAC has been broken for a long time, and I would love to go on public record and continue to question why Nancy Sheehan is the chair, while she is the partner of TJ's uncle at a law firm here in this city. Don't look at me like this is the first time you've ever heard it. That's the SPAC. And the transparency, the lack thereof, I should say. And former Attorney General Sorrell, I don't remember a bad cop on your watch. We had so many incidents where no foul, no harm, no foul, no harm, no foul, no harm. Never happened. So, you know, we're talking about oversight, that we're talking about a pre-existing condition that where there's a flawed oversight that in the first place. And then now we want to take that and merge it with something else that's police-like. Proximity is the best word I heard all day. So no, we don't think this is a good idea. Not now. What I think, what we believe is that it could happen or some form of it, but I think the proper level of engagement needs to occur, a robust level of community engagement. Let me tell you what's happening right now here, okay? So tonight I have a meeting. Tonight I have a meeting with a consulting firm that's out of Washington. The name of it is Talitha, and Karis would really appreciate the advertisement. The name of it is Talitha, and they're here in Burlington because this resolution passed by the city council says, let it be resolved that a joint committee of the City Council, Public Safety Committee, and the Police Commission begin an inquiry by July 31st into the question of how to build a healthy and safe community and what institutions we need to reach that goal. And that this inquiry include a full operational and functional assessment of the Burlington Police Department and analyzes who, what, when, where, and how the department polices. It includes a review and analysis of the assessment with full community participation and input. It's further resolved that the above assessment should include rigorous public process and input and include local groups such as blah, blah, blah. So all I'm really getting at here is there is a way to do what it is that you're doing, but I don't think you are doing it the right way. We want to be on record as pushing back on this, and we want to encourage an approach that is similar to the aforementioned. I want to talk a little bit about
Mr. Hughes, can I just stop you for one moment?
Yes, Senator Rahm.
Well, so I just want to say, first of all, thank you to Bill Sorrell and Bill Sheets for staying on video and really bearing witness to what's being said. I want to imagine that Mike Sherling has a good reason that he got off the call.
He had acknowledged earlier that he couldn't stay.
Okay, that really helps me out. That helps me out. So I'll anticipate that he's watching the video later, but I was really concerned for a second that while Black Man veteran was speaking, he just left. So I didn't remember.
Sorry.
Thank you, Senator Rahm. It also gave me a chance to take a breath. Hey, I'm a nice guy. I want to talk a little bit about, I'm just going to bounce on just two more things, maybe three. I want to talk a little bit about this whole idea of oversight. And now we've kicked the dead horse on oversight, and I'm just going to turn it on its head and say, what good is civilian oversight of law enforcement if you don't have independent prosecutorial power in alleged police misconduct? And why is nobody talking about that? It's another thing to open up, but it's something that we've yet to get resolved before even having this conversation. Okay. So I don't think that I think TJ told me yesterday, I was on a call with TJ yesterday, and he's like, Mark, or the day before, or both days, but he said, look, he said, we may not be doing it really good, but we've got SPAC, Mark. He said, that's the best we got. And I said, and that's a low bar. And I didn't get a response from him. Now, the reason why we pulled back from engagement in a flurry of policies that were, whether it was S119 or whether it was S219 or 124 or 24 or picky or flavor, whichever one you guys were serving up in the 11th hour last session, we pulled back because the main thing that we were trying to get you to understand is look, time out, dude. Let's get some police oversight on the table, because it doesn't really make any difference what the heck you do, because once you do it, if nobody gets held accountable, who cares? You can tell people Title 20, 23, 2366, collect data, do fair and impartial policing policy, do training. We've seen them refuse to do all of the above, and nobody's ever been held accountable. So the whole police oversight thing, I really urge you to get that thing baked right before you make a move. I'm glad to sit down with you and have a conversation about it. So let's work together on getting that done. Right now, what we're seeing from where I sit is I see a legislator that is far too friendly and incredibly just amenable and open to, even in day one in the state house, you guys are posted up all over the building, uniforms, guns, and all that other stuff, all over the show of force. I got no problem with police. Police got no problem with me, okay? But we do have a history. And the first experience I ever had with a cop was a boot on my head and a weapon in the back of my neck, and told me he was going to blow my head off and he used the N-word. And from that day forward, I've had very few good experiences with police and policing. And from 1850, Black and brown people have not. That's the facts, okay? This is not a new problem that we're having. So if we're acknowledging systemic racism and we're acknowledging that it exists in the system, then act like it does and do things that kind of hold out an olive branch, do things that make sense, reach out, do the things you need to do in these communities, reach out to these Black and brown communities if you can, find folks like me to help if you're interested, and stop making moves like this. And as far as the legislature is concerned, I think Rule 25 in the House says they oversee you. I wish the House and the Senate GovOps collectively would act like it. This is ridiculous. And the reason why I'm really frustrated with this is it's more of the same. This is how it always goes. You guys have open access to the legislature. The House GovOps and Senate GovOps is really nice to y'all. Don't hold y'all accountable. Push back on all of our racial justice bills. You show up when we bring forward racial justice bills. You crowd out the legislature when you bring forward your stuff, and our folks don't want to show up, and the clock keeps going. Come on, guys. So it's frustrating. It's really frustrating, but these are the facts. And I know it doesn't feel good. I know you don't like to hear what I'm saying, but it's the truth. And there's three things that I'm trying to do with this is I'm trying to be true to myself. I'm trying to be true to what I believe, and I'm trying to be true with you. And the facts are, this thing right here is going too fast. It's going, everybody's not on the bus. And I don't think it's completely baked, and that's evidenced. And basically, just how the chair opened up is you guys are still working on this thing. I wish I could bring a bill in and sit down with government operations and kick my feet up and yap it up and talk about what my policy is going to look like. You guys don't even have a policy? What did you do last week? So again, stop this, please. I'm not saying we don't want to do it. I'm saying let's do it right. Let's do it together. So here I am, I show up, I'm putting it out there, I'm wearing it on my sleeve. And the other thing is I'm also wearing the same X on my back. So I do this at great risk. This thing right here is being broadcasted out to everybody. I got cops all over the place as usual. I'm walking back in that room full of guns to tell you to stop this and get it right. I'll take your questions now.
First of all, I'm going to make a couple comments. And thank you,
Looking
Mark.
forward to it.
I do think that your characterization of what we had last week is completely off base. And I will say that because what we had was a joint committee meeting with this House Government Operations so that we could hear a proposal. We did the exact same thing with you this morning in Judiciary. We heard your proposal and then we had a discussion. And so we had a joint meeting. It was not a public hearing. It was a joint meeting to go over a draft of a bill. And we do that often. I prefer not to have joint committee meetings only because that means there's 17 people, 17 committee members, and it doesn't give a lot of time for any of the committee members to ask questions and have conversations. So we had that meeting and now we're having this. And you are invited to the table. We invited you to the table and we invited you to come in and have a conversation. And I think your characterization that we were being overly chummy with law enforcement in that hearing and that we're not being overly chummy or welcoming in this meeting is, if that's true, then I apologize because I thought that we were being open and welcoming and hearing from people. And we opened it up. We also offered to have it done in an executive session if that would make some people feel better. So I think your characterization of us as not as being overly chummy and not hearing from other people other than law enforcement is not well received.
May I be allowed to respond to your
yes.
comment that you just made there?
Yes.
So I just want to be clear. First of all, what's most evident is your position of defensiveness. But if we got beyond that, and I think we will, is the fact that this is not a joint hearing. This is not a joint committee, rather.
Right.
Okay.
You're
this
right.
is not a joint committee.
Right.
Last week was a joint committee. This is not a joint committee. This morning wasn't a joint committee. So I guess really all I'm really getting at, just so we don't get apples mixed with oranges, is the difference between a committee meeting and a joint committee meeting. This is not that.
And I explained, and I apologize if you think I'm being defensive. I am being defensive about the process. You are right about that. This is not a joint meeting.
No, it's
not. And the reason, we could have joint meetings all the time if we chose to, but it would mean that each committee member and each person testifying to us would have very little time because would be 16 or 17 committee members to ask questions and respond. And we could not have these kinds of conversations. So that's why, and if the committee disagrees, we could have joint meetings all the time. But I think that we're a
bicameral legislature. We are a bicameral legislature with two different bodies to support the chair on this. So if we met always in joint session, we'd be a unicameral legislature.
And
did you have any questions for me, Madam Chair? Because it sounds right now all I'm getting is defensiveness. Thank you, Senator Clarkson. But I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. But you know, if you're done with me, I can just dismiss myself.
No, I appreciate your coming forward, and I appreciate
you.
having the conversation with you. This
Okay.
this is not necessarily a new idea that has just come forward during the pandemic.
Mhm.
This has been on the table for at least 4 years. That,
That even makes it more unfortunate.
well, I'm just saying that's, so.
And yes, I have seen
I-
this policy on the table in the past, and I've seen it attempted to be lifted out of your committee before, and I did see it didn't have legs. I have been watching the legislature for
Yeah.
more than 15 minutes, so I understand that there has been several attempts to do this. I'm still confused as to why it is that I don't even understand. Didn't the governor issue an executive order on this? And help me understand. And this is an honest question. I'm not trying to.
Okay.
Don't respond on this one on the defensive. Okay. So what I'm saying is I'm asking just, there was an executive order that came out that said, hey, let's do this. I don't even know if it was communicated clearly, and I couldn't get a square answer from Representative Copeland Hanses either. Is this a result of the governor's executive order, or was that squashed, and did the legislature choose to do something different? I mean, on record, what is going on?
I'll tell you, I'll explain it if you
Okay.
want me to. The governor,
Yeah, that's the point.
because we had not gotten it through the legislature for a number of years, and for one reason or another, the governor issued an executive order, which was simply reorganizing some things. And I will say that all of the things that are consolidated here in the agency are currently in the department. So there's nothing new there except the academy. But so just so that you know that they already exist in the Department of Public Safety. So when the governor issued his executive order, the legislature felt that it was not fleshed out enough, that there was not enough detail, and that there was not enough input from the legislature itself and from other players. So we decided that we would not accept the executive order, but that we would pursue it in a legislative format, which is what we had been doing in the past. So that's what happened with the executive order.
All right, thanks for that. So just one quick follow-up question on that was there a statement that the legislature actually released on the executive order, like a response to and more importantly, is that the process? Is that what would normally happen?
Yes, if the legislature has 90 days from the issuance of the executive order to either accept it, which means they're doing nothing, they're just accepting the executive order, or to refuse to accept it, and either body, either chamber can refuse to accept it. The House took the lead on that one, and they refused to accept it, and there is a resolution that explains why.
So the House did accept it?
No, they did not, and that's why
Oh.
we're doing it legislatively.
Okay.
Either
All right.
either chamber can choose to not accept it, and then it doesn't go into effect. It doesn't take both chambers to do it.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Senator Clarkson?
So, Mark, I think the key question for us to continue, in terms of your concerns, and I really appreciate you sharing your concerns. You always help us see things in a different light, and generally very helpful. But I just go back to the question I posed after Reverend Cockrell spoke, which is, it seems to me that we need an answer to why would the agency format benefit BIPOC and marginalized communities in a way that the department doesn't? And that is, I think, a key question that's on the table that needs to be answered.
Well, I think there's a lot of questions on the table that need to be answered, but I appreciate that, Senator.
I realize, that's
But,
what we're stuck with weighing right now. And
Yeah, so Wabi, let me get after that, because and one of the things you might be considering is what's the hurry? That's the question that I want to answer. But I think the in my this is respectfully somewhat of a no-brainer, because when you take something that's already broken and you put a lot of them together, it doesn't mean it works better. So the question is not whether it's going to make it better or worse. The question is not so much, well, whatever, however you framed it. The question is I think more, could it exacerbate? And I think, again, the word of the day is proximity, which Sister Laporte left with us. And she said it just about as clear as I could hear it, in terms of, bringing all of these agencies together around something that's already broken, because it's not serving us now. Does that help, Senator Clarkson? Now, question back to y'all. What's the hurry?
Well, but may I just answer your question? I think that's a key question the commissioner needs to answer and we need to answer. Will this exacerbate the situation, or are there in fact reasons that it might actually help and improve communication and improve the situation? So
yeah,
that's why I'm looking forward to the commissioner's response to that question.
Well, I'm not. I'm looking forward to just you engaging the Black and brown and disabled and LGBTQIA and other disproportionately impacted communities, to ask them that question and other questions. That's what I'm looking forward to.
So one of the things that I would say is that currently all of these things except DMV and Fish and Wildlife already exist in the department. They already live in the department. So I guess a question, so I have two things here, two answers. A question would be, how do these divisions or proposed departments how do they provide disservice to the marginalized communities? Like Homeland Security, emergency management, fire safety, the hazmat team, search and rescue. Those are here. So are they currently not serving those communities well? And do we need to figure out how to have those services better serve the community? And the same thing with like 911 and the PSAPs and the forensic law and the fleet. Those are the things that are in here. This isn't just law enforcement. This is.
Yeah, I'm pretty aware of what's in the bill, Madam Chair.
But I wasn't.
Can I answer your question?
No, you can answer my question, but my question is going to be posed not just to you, but to the larger community. Let's get testimony on whether those services are currently underserving or not serving well the marginalized communities. And then to your response to your question about what's the hurry, we are not going to pass this before crossover. I've already talked to the commissioner about this, and we're going to continue the conversations and have a broader input and conversations about this going forward. So I've already made that proposal to the commissioner and said that that's the way we're going to do this. Just so your information.
Okay.
Senator Rahm?
By the way, on that last question, you answered it yourself. That's why I didn't respond, because that's exactly what that was my answer too, is you need to have a broader community. Just to let you know, I'm not being like snide or anything like that. You answered the question the way I would have answered it, okay?
Okay, thanks. Senator Rahm?
Well, I can also wait to just see if there's more questions, because mine is more of a comment at this point.
I would say go ahead and.
Okay. I'm there's a lot of sort of feelings and reactions in my body right now to our conversation today. The overwhelming one for me is a lot of appreciation. I just really want to appreciate the chair for, I think, staying in communication in tough circumstances when people are feeling this issue really emotionally. I want to thank those who've been staying on video from law enforcement side, who are really engaging and listening to these very difficult truths. And more than anyone, I really want to thank Mark, Jess, and Reverend Cockrell. It's really difficult to have these conversations in public as a Black person, an Indigenous person, or a person of color. I just want to say, I was, as somebody who was arrested at the age of 13 by the LAPD, it is very different for BIPOC Vermonters to have this conversation. And I very much appreciate feeling like there are other people in the room, quote unquote, who get that and know how different and how challenging this conversation is for us to have. I am really acutely aware when I was arrested at the age of 13, the major line of inquiry that was directed at me was my national origin. Was I Mexican? Was I born in this country? Was I here illegally? And I think I appreciate, Madam Chair, your offer of an executive session. I think particularly with DMV and some of these other questions, there are many people who may not have full legal status in this state who need to be able to communicate to us in a way that it is not safe to do in a forum like this. So I wanted to react to. And my only other reaction that I, as Senator Clarkson said, really want to hear from the commissioner and others is, why is this not an opportunity to reimagine policing and public safety in a racial reckoning, in a pandemic, in a time when there is the ability to pause and really reconsider where we're going, and looking at other states that have peace officers that are completely rethinking civilian oversight in many ways. Why the urgency without much vision? And that's what I feel like I'm hearing from some of our BIPOC witnesses and guests here today. And it's the question I'm really left with.
Thank you. Senator Polina?
Sometimes, first of all, I really do appreciate this conversation a lot. And I appreciate it in part because it is difficult, but it's things that need to be said and need to be heard. It need to be heard more and more often. I'm afraid one of the many challenges that we face is that when people, BIPOC people and others, don't show up to testify or to be engaged because they're frustrated and they feel like they're not going to be listened to anyway, unfortunately, people in power will sometimes translate that into thinking, well, everybody must be happy. Nobody's coming out to complain, right? We're offering public input and nobody's providing input. It must be because everybody likes what we're doing. And I think it's obviously the opposite is truth. So I just think that's important to keep in mind, that people in power, sometimes will find the translation of what's happening very different than the reality for people on the street. I just had a really quick, two quick, really random things, but one is that when we asked, if I remember correctly, when we asked Michael Sterling, or we got into a conversation with him about the training council, not the training council, the criminal justice council, sorry, and how it would be different, he basically pointed to the fact that they might have more resources, maybe get a bigger budget. That's what I remember as his reasoning, or the positive thing about putting it to train the Criminal Justice Council as part of this larger entity, is that they would have more resources available to them. And I'm not so sure that that's a good enough reason to do what they're trying to do, because I do think that this is a real opportunity to rethink how we look at oversight of police. I think that I want the Justice Council to be as independent as it possibly can be. And it makes me think about, I'm not a lawyer, I don't know how to deal with these things necessarily, but I wonder about whether, maybe this is a question, but when people are dealing with harassment, discrimination, use of force, whatever, does it ever end up at the Human Rights Commission? I'm just wondering I'm looking for models that, might work better than what we have. I'm just wondering if any of this stuff shows up at the Human Rights Commission. Is that ever the case?
I think, Bill Sorrell, did you have an answer to that?
Well, it could end up at the Human Rights Commission. And as you know, Senator, there is a representative of the Human Rights Commission on the new council.
Yeah.
But secondarily, now under the existing law, if there's an allegation of professional misconduct of any sort, but certainly relating to behavior that's shows a bias or discrimination, that the local entity, the police department in Bennington County, I'm just picking on Bennington, is required to notify the council of that allegation of misconduct and then to provide information as to what investigation they conducted and what determination they made on the allegation of professional misconduct. That all gets referred to our professional regulation subcommittee, which has the authority to independently investigate if they don't feel that the investigation in Bennington by the police department there was adequate, to conduct an independent investigation. And if there's a view on the part of that subcommittee that the police department in Bennington County didn't take what it found to have happened to be sufficiently serious in terms of a disciplinary nature, then the professional regulation subcommittee of our new council is authorized to refer the matter to the full council for a hearing and adjudication and the imposition of discipline, maybe on even the police officer's certification level. So you have potentially the Human Rights Commission, but which also has a voice on our council, but then independently our council to review what's done, but to independently investigate and to override what was done at the local level if we feel the situation warrants it.
Thank you.
Mark has
Madam Chair.
Yeah, Mark.
I just want to highlight the fact that this is my time to testify. You talked to these guys last week. You're going to talk to them more. So I would like to close my testimony out before the police start talking.
Okay, I just thought we had gone to the level.
We're having conversations. Yeah, we are. So I am talking to you and I'm talking to your committee. And I respect the fact that former Attorney General Sorrell did answer the fact of the Human Rights Council question, whether or not they had the ability to intervene. The answer drifted, but I would like attention to come back to me. Let's close out my testimony. If you're done with me and you want to talk to the police, this is your committee. I can go.
No, I do not necessarily want you to go. I thought at some point when we, in this committee, the way we operate is that we do have official testimony. We have that, but we then also, and this is one of the reasons why I don't like joint committees meetings, is because we can have conversation. We can have different people weighing in and talking to each other. And if that is offensive, we won't do it.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
When most people who look like me come to your committee for an issue like this, they don't want to talk to the police. They don't even want the police here. We already established that. Now, I've already made it very clear the relationships that I have with some of these gentlemen, distinguished, I might add, that are here. That's not the point. I came here to testify, and I'm here to testify, and I represent a group of folks across this state. And whether it's backhanded or unintentional, the thing is we don't need sound bites in this about how good we're doing in oversight, because we're not. Okay, so what I'd like to do is I'd like to, just follow up on that and just state, and it's unfortunate because if you're explaining, you're losing, but Title 20, 2401 through 2404 is ineffective. It proved itself to be ineffective with the Bennington Chief of Police, and it proved itself to be ineffective with the Chief of Police here in Burlington. And I'll stop there. As far as, you know, just closing out, and then I can just skedaddle, is unless there's any other questions for me, is that I still haven't quite heard what the hurry is. And I did hear that that we're not going to take this thing across the finish line until the backside of the biennium. But I still haven't heard. Nobody on this call, nobody's answered. And I'll be open, you know, glad to take emails. We email each other all of the time. Glad to hear back from the committee unless somebody else from the committee has. I just don't understand it. I'm glad to stop for a minute and listen to it. And I'll just pause right here. And if somebody could explain to me what, you know, why we need to do this right now, as opposed to some of the things that we just got finished talking about, I'm all ears.
Well, I've said that we aren't rushing this through, and we are continuing to have the other conversations. So I don't know what else to say. Does any other committee member have some response to that? Okay.
Fair enough. So, and I'll just conclude by thanking you for allowing me to come into this committee, and thank every committee member for the hard work that you do. I appreciate that. I know that you're trying to do something good. Sometimes you can try to do something good and it turns out hurting other people. And that's what I came to tell you. Okay. And if you need more to understand just how public safety, when it's really useful, and it makes, you know, white people, elderly white people, or maybe, you know, I don't know, white people in affluent neighborhoods feel safe, while at the same time makes other people feel, you know, black and brown people feel different. We want to talk about how policing has always protected white people and their property. And, you know, you want to talk about the history of that. And if you need somebody to lay that out for you, to come into this committee and provide you testimony as to what this thing really means, to unpack a conversation about black and brown bodies and public safety and policing, I'm glad to do it. I didn't come to do it today. Okay. But I appreciate the work that you're doing. I thank you for the opportunity. And I just want to end on this whole idea of something that my good friend Senator Rahm had just said, and I just want to just tweak it a little bit, because I want to make something very clear. I am not emotional. I am not uppity. I am speaking truth to power as a black man, and this is how we do it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Have a good day.
Thank you. You too. All right. I think we're going to end the testimony.